Good day, Jonathan and Jillian. This lecture will be on the election of 2008 and what followed after it. The election of 2008, coming at the end of George W. Bush's 8 years in office, in which we went to war following the 9/11 attacks with Afghanistan and Iraq, and keeping in mind that both of those wars were still ongoing. The surge had suppressed most of the violence in Iraq. Remember that increase in troops that George Bush sent in 2007, and the deals that they cut with local Sunni leaders to switch them over to the pro-American side. That had reduced a lot of the violence in Iraq. But the ongoing sore that was the war in Afghanistan, these continual Taliban attacks, were still ongoing. So the year 2008 would still see Americans very much in harm's way in Afghanistan, somewhat less so in Iraq. We were hopeful that we would soon be able to wrap up our involvement in Iraq when the election was taking place. So you might think Afghanistan would have been a pretty big deal in the election, but frankly, it wasn't. Both the Democratic and Republican candidates, that would be Barack Obama and John McCain, believed that we had to continue to fight until the Taliban was defeated in Afghanistan. You'll remember that the whole reason Al-Qaeda had been able to have those camps in Afghanistan had been the fact that Afghanistan was a failed state. It no longer really could control the territory it was supposed to govern. Pardon me. So you had, a consensus of opinion among American policymakers that we had to stay the course in Afghanistan. So that really was not. I can't recall a single major debate over exactly what to do in Afghanistan. And as I said, pretty much both sides thought we were going to be removing our troops from Iraq soon after the election. So foreign policy did not play that big a role in the election. This is a little ironic in that John McCain, the Republican nominee, senator from Arizona, one-time, hero of the Vietnam War, a Navy pilot who'd been shot down over North Vietnam, spent years in a terrible prison camp there called the Hanoi Hilton, returned home, a hero's welcome, had served very well, very respected figure in the United States Senate for decades, but his specialization was foreign policy. So you would think he would have made foreign policy a big deal, but since Barack Obama didn't really disagree with him on much foreign policy-wise, it just wasn't a big issue. Now, Barack Obama. Barack Obama is one of the least experienced on the national stage candidates to win the presidency. He had been in the state legislature of Illinois. He's an Ivy League trained man, right? I want to make sure that that's clear. He was a man who had grown up all over the world. His mother was a PhD student in anthropology when she met his father, a student from Kenya. They were married. Barack was born, but then soon after their parents split and divorced. So Barack did not really know his father. His mother, who incidentally was white, so Barack Obama, everybody talks about as our first black president. Actually, he was mixed race. His African father, his mother was a white woman from Kansas. She was a student at the University of Hawaii. After she graduated, she moved to Indonesia with the young Barack. And her second husband was an Indonesian man. So she had two husbands who were not American. And Barack actually attended local schools at the beginning of his life. But when he was still, I think, late in his childhood, they also split up, and she moved back to Hawaii, where her mother and her maternal grandparents were the ones raising him. So that's where he went to high school, was in Honolulu. But then he went off to Columbia University in New York City, Ivy League school, and then the law school at Harvard, where he was, I think, editor of the Law Review. Very highly successful student. And then he moved to Chicago to become a community organizer, which is someone who, tries to work in the African American community to foster the interest of the African American community on the south side of Chicago, where he met his wife, Michelle, who was a patent lawyer, I believe. So they're both attorneys by training. But Barack Obama eventually was elected to the state legislature of Illinois, where he served, I think, about 12 years. He also was hired by the University of Chicago as an adjunct professor in the law school of constitutional law. Incidentally, I actually heard him lecture when I was a student at the University of Chicago. He was just a state legislator. And I remember turning to my friend and saying, this guy's really impressive. He was a very good public speaker. And I said, this guy's very impressive. I think he'll go somewhere. So when he was just a state legislator and a small-time professor of constitutional law at the University of Chicago, I thought, this guy's going somewhere. He's a pretty impressive character. I didn't wind up voting for him, but but he clearly was a very articulate and intelligent man. Anyway, he served in the state legislature, I think, about a dozen years. And then the U.S. Senate seat came open. Carol Moseley Braun had been the U.S. Senator. She moved, she left her seat, and Barack Obama ran for it and was elected to it. He was elected to the United States Senate from the state legislature. That's a pretty big jump. And he had served less than a full term in the U.S. Senate when he ran for president. But Barack Obama did what Jimmy Carter had done in 1976. He essentially moved to Iowa and campaigned all over the state. He is an excellent public speaker. He has a touch, a way with people, and he was able to, what's called retail politics, get out shaking hands and eating in diners, talking to people across tables. He was able to come from virtually nowhere to become the Democratic nominee in 2008. Interestingly enough, the woman he beat was Hillary Rodham Clinton. She was the other major Democratic candidate, and it was fairly close, but he won the nomination. So, Hillary Clinton would eventually become his Secretary of State in his cabinet, but she had been his challenger. And until the middle of summer, most people still thought she was going to be the Democratic nominee until Barack Obama took the nomination from her, basically. All right. So if foreign policy wasn't the issue, what was? The most crucial issue that was on the docket, environmental issues were talked about a lot, but the number one thing was health care. Getting health care for uninsured Americans, that roughly 10% of Americans who didn't have health care. And that was pretty much the main thing Barack Obama was stressing. Now, you might recall when I talked to you about Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, that in the early days of Clinton's presidency, a commission had been set up. Hillary had chaired it to try to get coverage for uninsured Americans. They had Hillary Care, it was called, was a single payer plan. Now, when you hear that phrase, single payer, what you should imagine is a Canadian or British or Scandinavian style system where the government pays for all health care, or almost all health care. You go to a doctor, they are compensated by the government, and unless you're very wealthy, in some countries that have single payer, you can still buy private insurance, but the vast majority of people don't. And because the pool of people who get private insurance is so small, it tends to be very expensive. But essentially what Hillary Clinton's plan had been in 1993 had been a government takeover of the entire healthcare system of America. But that had gone down in flames. It turned out that the American people didn't really want to give up choosing their own doctor. If many of them were quite happy with the health insurance they had, and they didn't want to lose it in favor of government plan. Remember, Ronald Reagan had conditioned a lot of Americans to think of government was more likely to screw something up than make it better, so they were scared to have a government takeover of healthcare. Well, Obama knew this. So the plan he put forward was actually one based on a plan out of Massachusetts. The state of Massachusetts had put a plan in place. And what it was private insurance. But there were exchanges set up where people in Massachusetts could go, shop around for plans on a government-run website, state government in that case, shop around for plans that they thought was best for them, what they wanted out of the plan, how much they were willing to pay. And then, if you were low income, if you didn't earn enough to pay the premiums for that private insurance, the government would kick in a subsidy to low-income Massachusetts people so they could afford to buy the private insurance. This Massachusetts plan got a nickname after the governor's name, Romney Care. The governor of Massachusetts who came up with this was the Republican Mitt Romney, the very man who would run against Barack Obama as the Republican nominee for president in 2012. Was the governor of Massachusetts who came up with this. And it was meant to be not Hillary Care. Hillary Care had been a government takeover of health care. This was going to be private health care insurance chosen by the citizen out of a number of plans. And if you were low income, the government gave you extra money so you could afford to make the premiums. But here's the rub with all those kind of plans. Everybody has to take part or it may not work. The reason for that is if you let people choose not to get health insurance, the people who wind up buying the health insurance will be sicker than the average person. If healthy people can say, oh, I'm young and healthy, I don't need to buy insurance, then the people who actually do buy the insurance are going to be the older and sicker people. And it will burden the insurance companies too much to insure all those older, sicker people. And low-income people tend to have more illnesses anyway for complex reasons. But so you can see the problem there. The answer was everybody would have to, by law, have health insurance. You couldn't choose not to get it. All right. You would be fined if you didn't have health insurance. You could always go to the exchange, find the plan you want. If you're low income, the government would help you pay for it. But if you were middle class, you could not say, oh, I don't want to pay for health insurance. You had to have it, or you'd be fined. Okay. I know that's rather complicated. But that Massachusetts plan is what Barack Obama put forward for the whole United States. He thought he had a winner in that it wasn't Hillary Care. It wasn't a government takeover. You're still going to be able to choose your own doctor. You still can choose which health care plan by a private insurance company you want. And if you're low income, the government will help you pay the premiums with a subsidy. But like Massachusetts, Obamacare, as it came to be known, was going to have to require all Americans to have health care. Now, like I said, healthcare is not cheap. I'll just give you my figures. Every single month I have to pay for my own health insurance. It is $689 per month for healthcare. And I have the cheapest plan I can get with a very high deductible. I have to shell out thousands of dollars if I went in the hospital out of my own pocket before the insurance would even pay anything. Because that was the cheapest plan I could get. $689, and then another $79 for dental to get insurance for that. So $750 basically is what I pay every single month. That's nearly $10,000 a year. Now, I'm an obese man of 55 with asthma, but if I were a 23-year-old recent college graduate in excellent health, I might be tempted to say, no, I think I could use that $10,000 a year better to spend it elsewhere. I'm willing to run the risk of not having health insurance because I'm healthy and I haven't been sick in several years, and I can save some money and pay for things out of pocket. Now, I'm not saying that that's a wise thing to do. Personally, I think that is not wise. So I don't counsel you to do that. But there are people who do make that choice, that they would want to not pay for health insurance and keep the money themselves and sort of gamble that they won't get sick, seriously sick. Well, Obamacare said you cannot do that. If you do not have health insurance, you will be fined thousands of dollars. When you file your income taxes, you have to swear that you do have health insurance. You can't say no or you get fined. And again, that's because the system is built on the assumption everybody is part of the healthcare insurance scheme. You can't opt out. The healthy people can't opt out. Otherwise, it wouldn't be workable for the insurance companies. Or the premiums would have to be crazily high. So it wouldn't work anyway. This is called the mandate, the Obamacare mandate. It was passed by the democratically controlled Congress in 2013. It was a close vote, but it made it through. Signed into law by President Obama. It's the Affordable Care Act is the actual name, ACA, although people called it Obamacare. Private exchanges operated by the government, an exchange of private health insurance operated by the government. Low-income people can get subsidies to help them pay their premiums, but everybody must pay under the ACA mandate, and if you don't, you get fined. So that was what was passed. This was very controversial. There were plenty of Americans who were outraged that the government was telling them they had to buy a product, which is what it was doing. This was not a tax directly by the government. This was saying you, American citizen, must buy a product from a private corporation. And if you don't, we'll fine you. There were people who really, really, really hated the mandate. People called it socialized medicine. It's not that. Hillary Care, you could have said that about. This was private health insurance. It's just requiring everybody to buy some. Eventually, the Supreme Court would take this question of the mandate up, and they would actually say it was constitutional. They would say that it's effectively a tax. You either pay the private company for the insurance, or you pay what amounts to a tax to the government. So it's essentially a tax. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote the opinion, and that was the rationale for saying it was legal for Congress to create Obamacare. That was 4 years ago, I think, that happened. Subsequently, after Mr. Trump was elected, the Republican-controlled Congress actually repealed that mandate, that requirement to buy health insurance, and the system is tottered, but it's limped along without it so far. All right, that was the big event at the beginning of the Obama administration. We'll talk a little more about the Obama administration in the next lecture, then move on to the most recent past. Thank you.